Chapter 6. An hour later, Bill was happily stoned and feeling very little pain. His leg talked to him now and then, but they were distant, mostly ignored conversations. Instead, he was focused on the tower of blocks climbing from the tabletop. They kept swaying nearly imperceptibly, and he knew that was the THC, but it made it difficult to slide out a block without knocking over the tower. Janet had knocked over the last one, and Ellen before that. Bill would count it as a victory if he managed to pull more than a few blocks. Ellen stifled a belch just as he was about to touch the block he wanted. Emma glared at her, and she blushed. He turned back and wiggled one out of the center. The tower swayed visibly, and this time he knew it wasn't the THC. He had it halfway out, paused, and then slowly pulled. The block came free, and although it swayed, the tower remained. He sat back with a sigh, reached for his iced tea, found it empty, and frowned. Nicholas appeared as though summoned, with a fresh glass. Thanking him, Bill once again leaned back. Ellen pulled her hand from the table and put it against her belly. After staunching another belch, she said, "Excuse me." "You okay?" "A little indigestion, I think." Bill nodded to her, placed a hand on her knee, and gently squeezed. Ellen gave him a warm smile and then stifled another belch. "I bet Nicholas would bring you something." She shook her head. "I just may need to go back to the bungalow for a little while." Bill frowned and squeezed again. "Want me to come with you?" After shaking her head again, she took a sip of water. "I think you should stay here for another hour or two and wake me up." "You sure?" She moved her hand from her belly to his crotch and touched him through his shorts. "I'm sure." "Hey!" Philip yelled. "It's your turn again, Bill." Yeah. He waved to the drunken man before turning back to Ellen. "You're sure you're okay?" "Will be," Ellen said, her skin a little paler than before. "Need to take care of some private business." "Ah," he said, leaning forward and kissing her. "Then I'll be up there in an hour or so, okay?" "Will do," she said, and rose from the bench, Bill following suit. Philip and Russ both rose as well. Bill was rather surprised at the courtesy. Maybe Philip wasn't so bad after all. "Ladies, gentlemen, it was fun, but I have to go." "No," everyone except Bill said. "Sorry," she said, waving to them. As Nicholas approached her, she pointed to the cart. He nodded, and she followed him to the vehicle. A moment later, they were heading up the path to the bungalow. "Stop stalling, Bill," Russ said. "She'll still be there when you go back." Bill glared at him before softening his smile. "I think I need another puff before I pull this next block." Janet giggled and pointed at him. "You have another whiff of that stuff and you're going to be horizontal." "Well, that'll be fun too," he said, putting the vape to his lips. He took a short sip, reached for a block, and immediately brushed it with the back of his hand. The tower swayed precariously for a moment before falling upon the table, the blocks scattering everywhere. The table broke into laughter and Bill covered his eyes with his fingers. "Fuck." Another gale of laughter broke out, and Philip banged his fist on the table. "Rack 'em if you can." He leaned over and said something to Autumn. She nodded, kissed his cheek, and she stood from the table. "I'm turning in, folks. I think I ate too much." Philip groaned. "Two out already? Shit, Russ, the goddamn moon hasn't even hit its apex." I know, but I'd rather not blast you with swamp gas. I'll do better tomorrow, I promise." Yeah, Philip said, and looked over at Autumn. "You wussing out too?" She shook her head, grinning. "Hell no, I want shots, and for Bill to play some more." She leaned in conspiratorially. "It's fun to watch you struggle." Russ met Angelo, they spoke, and headed up the path soon after. Bill watched them go, feeling both confused and annoyed. He liked Russ. He was beginning to like Philip, but the man made him anxious. Now he was all alone with two women and a happy drunk. Ellen's not feeling well, and neither is Russ. Maybe something they ate? No, everyone at the table had eaten from the same menu and, presumably, the same stash of ingredients. The only difference was the portion size. And Ellen skipped the crab rangoon. Philip had steak, too. So what was the common denominator? Maybe there isn't one. He suddenly had the image of Russ in their room, his hands on Ellen's breasts, and then, "Hey!" Autumn called to him. Bill started and realized he was gripping his glass a little too hard. "Hmm?" She moved across the bench until she was directly before him. "You looked lost there for a minute." He forced a grin and gestured to his leg. It's a little distracting.
Means you need another hit,
She said, and handed him her vape.
small hit and all your worries will drift away.
Bill followed orders. After Nicholas escorted her to the door, Ellen's stomach went into full revolt. She barely managed to make it to the bathroom before she vomited a thin stream of watery bile. She paused for a moment, thinking that was all she had to clear, but then a great gout of chunky gruel shot from her mouth into the toilet. She clutched the sides of the porcelain commode as her body convulsed again and again, the bowl filling with stinking bile and undigested food. She dry heaved multiple times before the cramps finally stopped. Exhausted, she leaned to the side of the toilet, nearly retching from the stench in the bowl. Sweat dripped from her forehead onto the expensive tile, and tears ran down her face. Her throat burned, her stomach was a boiling cauldron of heartburn, and all she wanted was to sleep or lay her head down on the cool tile and pass out. She closed her eyes, sighed, and tried to do just that. Dozens of cramps hit her, and she cried aloud, holding her pelvis as if to staunch the pain. They ceased just as instantly as they'd begun. She panted, placing one cheek against the tile floor. Stars flickered before her blurred vision as she felt something wriggling deep inside her, somewhere behind her pelvic bone. The sensation brought back the memory of the slimy thing getting into her mouth. Had she swallowed one and hadn't noticed in her convulsions? No, that was stupid. The crawling feeling would be in her stomach, not... She writhed in agony as another series of cramps pummeled her insides, her head clipping the edge of the toilet's base. She saw more stars, but the pain abated for a few beats before the worst of the cramps hit. Each felt like malevolent fingers scratching at her uterus, their claws rending and mangling the flesh and organs. A shriek locked in her throat while extreme pain took her breath. Eyes scrunched, tears running down her cheeks, she knew she was dying. She didn't know why or how, but this was killing her. Her heart beat so hard in her chest that she thought it would leap from her ribcage, and her lungs felt choked with razor blades. Just as the pain overwhelmed her, pushing her to the brink of unconsciousness, it stopped. A line of drool escaped her lips and pooled on the tile beside her. The galaxies of stars clouding her vision slowly receded, but she felt an enormous pressure behind her pelvis. She rolled over slowly and got on all fours. Exhausted and barely conscious, she crawled up the edge of the toilet until she could sit. The pressure continued. Crying in fear, she pulled off her pants and panties. Beads of perspiration popped up on her skin like goose flesh, and flashes of heat rebounded in her skull. Leaning back on the toilet as another wave of pressure heaved into her, she cried out in a rasp as something dropped from her vagina with a splash. The porcelain bowl echoed with a gurgling flatulence, the sound barely registering in her mind. A tidal wave of pressure hit her abdomen and slowly moved down into her pelvis. She felt liquid drizzling out of her amidst the sound of chunky flesh hitting the water. It went on for what seemed like hours, her body feeling more and more hollow as the pressure slowly released. The pain savaging her nervous system faded into dim echoes as she took a long, relieved breath. Liquid dripped from her vagina into the bowl in a pathetic mockery of rain hitting a puddle. Ellen tried to move, and a mild bolt of pain hit her middle. Clenching her teeth, she rose slowly from the toilet seat, considered looking into the bowl, decided not to, and hit the button to flush it. The expensive toilet swallowed the load without complaint, although it sounded as though it had been sucking down some rather solid material. She winced and nearly retched at the idea. Feeling somewhat stable, she stumbled to the shower stall and turned on the water. Warm streams immediately spawned from three sides as well as the ceiling. She stared down and watched as trails of red, yellow, and rust swirled into the drain. A few moments later, there was only clear water and that feeling of having been drained. She turned in the streams, allowing the water to caress and lick every pore of her body. When she finished, she stared down at her groin, half expecting to see a great wound. Nothing looked out of the ordinary. Had she suffered some sort of miscarriage? Was that what happened? Maybe she didn't want to know. She was breathing, her heart wasn't racing, and the pain had transformed into the occasional mild discomfort. Was she okay? What could they do here if she wasn't okay? Could they take her to the mainland in a copter? Get her somewhere with 5-star health care? She seriously doubted it. Miscarriage, an alien voice said in her mind. Must have been it. Just don't tell Bill. It will kill him. Ellen cocked her head to the side and then looked around the shower for invisible speakers. The sound hadn't come from outside her skull, but from within it. She waited for the voice to speak again, but it didn't. Shuddering, Ellen killed the water and stepped out of the shower. After drying herself, she spied a trail of rust-colored droplets leading from the shower to the toilet. Cursing, she finished with the towel, dropped it to the floor, and slowly walked it back to the toilet. Somewhat pleased with her cleanup job, she tossed the towel into the hamper, walked to the closet, affixed a fresh pad to her panties, and slipped into them. Rather than sleep with her breasts exposed, she chose to wear her nightshirt. Fatigue tugged at her exhausted mind and body. So much pain, so much fear, and now she had nothing left. Ellen drank a glass of water and crawled into bed. A few minutes later, she was asleep, one hand lying over her pelvis. Russ didn't so much as say goodbye to Angelo after he dropped them off. During dinner, he'd had the occasional twinge of pain in his left testicle. Toward the end of the meal, however, the twinges had become more frequent. By the time they were on their third tower of blocks, he couldn't ignore it anymore. The doctor had examined his testicles shortly after they'd been attacked by the crab. An attack was how he thought of it. And as embarrassing as that had been, the doctor pronounced it a bite, loaded him up with some drugs, which he didn't take, and sent him on his way. Now he wished he'd taken them instead of choosing to drink, even a little. The alcohol had sat in his stomach like an unwelcome guest, not seeming to metabolize, but only making him feel comfortably full. Plus, the drinks tasted terrible. Maybe the valets were off their game, or the ingredients had been shit. Maybe it was some kind of food poisoning. He hoped that was the case, as another twinge made him catch his breath, this time from the right testicle. Cursing, Russ undressed from the waist down and headed to the freezer. He pulled out a few ice cubes, wrapped them in a washcloth, and carefully lay on the bed. The twinges became bolts of pain that nearly rolled him off the mattress. After placing the cold towel against his testicles, he sighed in relief as the fire in his balls died down. He should have taken the anti-inflammatories, or maybe even the Benadryl, but now he didn't know if he could stand getting back out of bed. God, don't let Autumn find me like this, he thought. His wife would giggle at him, maybe even point in humor, before rubbing him down with antibiotic cream or something like that. A sad grin tugged at his lips. Sex would have to wait until tomorrow, although if he wasn't feeling any better by morning, he'd go see that quack at the infirmary and find out what was going on. The last thing he needed was his wang to stop working or his damn balls to fall off. He shivered and tried to forget that thought. God, what if they had to helicopter him out of here? Would they? The ice was helping, and the swelling in his left testicle appeared to have gone down. Maybe he just needed to take the drugs after all. The ice was uncomfortably cold, but he held the washcloth in place as long as he could tolerate. He carefully lifted it and waited for the pain to reappear, but there was nothing except his freezing, shrunken balls. Smiling in relief, he put the washcloth aside and rolled onto his side. In a few minutes, he slept. An hour later, Bill found himself in the cart, Nicholas driving them away from the beach. The tang and stench of vomit coated his taste buds, and his throat burned. Nicholas? Yes, Bill? I didn't do anything stupid. Nicholas paused before replying. There is no gossip allowed on the island, he said. But no, you did nothing stupid. Thank Christ. I don't even remember getting in the cart. Nicholas chuckled. You needed help. I'll have you home in a few minutes. Bill thanked him and stared upward into the star-filled sky. Without the constant light pollution from a city like Austin, it was a thing of unimaginable beauty, rather than something he walked beneath. His vision blurred, and the cart came to a sudden stop. What? Bill asked in confusion. We're here, Nicholas said. But hadn't he just been looking at the sky? Shit, he was fucked up. Nicholas helped him to the door, and after flashing his badge at the sensor, he stumbled inside. A light came to life, dispelling the darkness but leaving plenty of shadows. Good night, Nicholas. Good night, Bill. The door closed behind him, and Bill started toward the bed. Ellen was beneath the sheets, fast asleep. After vomiting once more into the toilet, he lay next to her in a stupor before closing his eyes and passing out. Autumn returned to her and Russ's bungalow 30 minutes after Bill had called it a night by passing out across the picnic bench and smashing the last tower of bricks. The man clearly couldn't hold his THC, which was a shame. Russ had already given her permission to feel out Bill and Ellen about a foursome. Based on Ellen's reaction at the beach, however, she wasn't sure that was in the cards. The woman had seemed unnerved at their nudity. She might be a bit straight-laced for group sex. Still, it didn't hurt to drop a few hints and see where they landed. She yawned loudly into her hand, said goodnight to Angelo, and flashed her bracelet at the door. It opened in the darkness before a single nightlight came to life. She made out the hump of rust beneath the covers. Sighing, she closed the door, stripped off her clothes, and piled them onto an empty chair. Russ snorted something in his sleep, followed by a few mumbled words, but he didn't wake. She grinned in the darkened room and crawled into bed beside him. Curling a hand around his waist, she brushed against his flaccid penis and balls. He whimpered in his sleep before snapping awake with a roar. God damn it! Autumn moved backward and sat on her knees.
Baby?
Russ panted, one hand clutching his privates. Don't touch!
Oh shit, I'm sorry, I forgot.
Russ growled and lay back down. Going to see the quack in the morning.
Oh, good. I'm sorry I didn't.
It's okay, he said, mild annoyance coloring his words. Just no touching until the doc figures this out, okay?
Okay,
Autumn said.
Can I still hold you?
She finally heard a smile in his voice. Please do.